Alright, now we're going to take a bit of a look at curve functionality. So in order to do this, we're going to construct two curves in Rhino. So we'll just give them a bit of a wobbliness to them. So there's one, and there's our second one. Now I might just want to edit those a little bit more. So I'm going to hit this button over here, which turns points on for a curve. And then I'm just going to take these and I'm going to drag them up vertically or down, and then I'll do the same with these. Okay, so now I'm going to take these curves and I can, I'll bring them in as two separate parameters. So this will be curve 1 and this will be curve 2. Alright, now from the curve menu there is a lot that we can do here. And the first thing we're going to look at is dividing a curve. So we can either divide a curve based on a number of segments or based on a distance. So that's the first thing we'll look at. We'll plug this curve into this input, and by default the number is set to 10. So we can, as we usually do, create an integer slider with a value of 0 to 20, and if we plug that in, we can control the number of divisions we get along that surface. Now if we were to do a divide distance, works on the same principle, except we'll just set it to real numbers this time. And so now, as we increase the distance, we get fewer points. As we decrease the distance, we get more points. Simple. Alright, now we'll go back to the divisions based on an initial number, and we will also plug the first curve into a copy of that division. And so now we have an equal number of divisions on both curves. And what we could do with this is, for instance, we could create a line between those 2 points. So firstly, before we do that, we're just going to inspect this list of points coming out here. So it is giving us 9 points along that curve. Same thing with this one. So when we plug point A and point B in, it will make 9 curves along, or it will make 9 lines along the length of these 2 curves. And as we update the count, the number of lines changes. We can also go back and turn these points on, and as we manipulate the curve, these points will update accordingly. Now what we can also do with curves, which can be quite useful, is something called a loft. So a loft is basically a surface between 2 or more different curves. So if I were to plug these curves in, we automatically get this really nice, smooth, lofted surface. And once again, we can turn points on, and this geometry remains fully interactive. Now, what else can we do with these curves? We might not want to divide the curve as such. We might want to just get a single point along that curve. So in order to do that, we're going to get an evaluate curve component. So we're going to plug the curve in, or both curves in. Okay, and so we'll turn the loft off. Now what this is asking, or what the evaluate curve function is asking for, is C, the curve to evaluate, and T, which is a parameter along the curve. So the parameter is basically a measure of distance, and so we're going to plug a slider into our curve evaluate, and you'll notice that as we evaluate this curve between 0 and 1, it's not doing a lot, because all it's doing is evaluating up to 1 unit across the curve. But what we can do is we can reparameterize this curve, which means that it basically turns this curve from however long it is into a 0 to 1 curve space. So the beginning of the curve is equal to 0 and the end of the curve is equal to 1. If we set this to 0.5, it finds the midpoint of that curve. And we can do the same thing with the second curve as well. And so that gives us the midpoint of both. And then we can just connect our line up to those 2 points, and we get a line which can vary right along any which point we want. We could also create a secondary parameter for the second curve so that we maintain full flexibility over where this where the point position is along each curve.